Okay, it's live. So yeah, we're live now. Hold on. Hold on. I'll send it to you in a sec. Okay, so okay. And where is it? No, there it is. Yep. That doesn't look good at all. Steven, you want to? No, I can do it. No, I know you can't. Okay, I'll turn it around. I'll turn it around. Yeah, hold on a second. Hold on a second. And yeah, okay, good. I'll do it. Ah. Okay. Why did that not send? Okay, I'm gonna forward this. I'm gonna forward it to you, Dima. This links. I don't know. Maybe you can monitor. I don't know. It didn't send to mine. Yep. Hold on. Yeah, I'm trying. We have to do that. Hold on. Because Steven, what's your what S Kovats at Rogue? Your Kovats at Rogue? Yeah, -media.org. Yeah, okay. Kovats. -media. Okay, so I sent you the links. Okay, so yeah, hold on. That's good. That's good. Let's close the washing machine, the dishwasher, and I don't know because we unnecessarily get the kitchen stuff. Just move it over there and move it closer to the center, and then turn it that way. Yeah.
But then we have no table at all.
The table, yeah. Well, you can push it back. And yeah. That looks good.
Yeah.
Right?
Then you know, Ben beside him.
We got like 3 people there, but
Steven will be right here, so we'll be the 3 rogue guys.
Three rogues.
3 rogues.
Can you talk, Ben?
Yes, my name is Ben. Great. We're doing that.
Actually, my voice is louder for some reason, but I have to check the settings. Hold on. Yeah. Please continue talking. At a loss? Well. Okay, that looks good. Can you stop talking for a second? Okay. So you're gonna test it there? Yep. Excellent. We're almost ready. 2 minutes. 1 minute.
You sent me the URL, right?
I sent you the link and the embed.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. You like it? Sorry. Hey, hi, hey, yeah, 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 hey, hey, hey. I'm definitely getting sound in here. Are you getting background noise? Well, I'm on the Yamaha now. Yeah. So I don't know, is there a setting on the Yamaha where I can, I don't know, it seems to be coming in here through the Yamaha. Should I take a look? You have a flashlight in your phone? Yeah. Makes light. Light. Yeah, recent volume. Just touch those. Just touch the speakers? Touching them? Touch. Yeah, okay. Touch the other one in the microphone. No, that one doesn't do anything. Just the one on the side. Just that one. Yeah. Okay, can you talk?
Yeah, I'm talking.
Okay, that looks good. So we point that one towards Leben. Just point it towards where you are. So, no. Point it. Turn the whole thing. No, the other way. Yes, the other way. Yes, good. Okay. Talk, please.
Yes, I'm talking. Talk.
Ima? Are you don't hear anything. Okay. Hello? Talk. Looks good to me. From my point of view, everything is working. So, you hear something? It's delayed, eh? It's delayed. That's him. Yeah, keep talking, man. What's the problem? Alphabet. Where were you born? What would you like to do? You want to check the video now?
Yeah, just one more minute.
Well, I don't think it's my mic. I don't think it's my mic. Because I turned it on. I turned my mic off. Yeah. It's impossible. Touch the mic, please. No, touch the mic.
Is the projector on?
Yes. No, it's not on yet. Touch it a little bit harder. It's on. He's not talking.
I am talking now. I'm not sure why this is not working.
I just reset the microphone.
I started hanging out to the film setting or something, and then it doesn't.
Oh, look, it does not seem like the tapping I didn't hear.
Look, it's on Yamaha.
Yeah. No, but do go right back. Yeah, but this thing has its own settings.
It's not okay.
Here?
No, it's cameraman.
Cameraman, where's the settings? That'd be the gear.
Here.
Yeah. There you go. Default microphone.
Oh shit. Right.
Right. Now is this working? Is this better now? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. Okay, yeah, I am talking, blah, 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 testing this microphone. Is it going through? Is it... I'm hoping that... Yeah? Wir sind gut? Perfect.
Alright, so should we close the door and start this video? I'm just gonna go in there and keep talking. Can you
absolutely.
or put somebody else there who can talk?
Yeah, so I'm for some reason I'm coming up short of words and I am testing this thing. I blah 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 blah. I have a friend coming here tomorrow, and I'm quite looking forward to it. We're going to Prague next weekend. It should be fun. I'm looking forward to checking out some stuff in Berlin. Touristy stuff again that I haven't seen in several months. Still trying to make a plan for the weekend, but it probably involves karaoke on Sunday. We will see. But looking forward to the weekend after a long week at work, traveling around, bus trips, long bus trips.
Make sure you're not doing that in the audio.
Okay.
Am I still?
We're ready to go, I think. Steven got stop the crazy. These guys are crazy. I'm just gonna talk that we're going on. And why don't we kick these off? Pardon? Yes, they were not here.
Now, we don't have a projector to show.
I'm Steven the Ginger for the summer year.
Yeah, well.
Yeah. I'm a student at the University of Alberta. Back
Turn around again.
yeah, so I'm helping out with rogue agencies.
Move it back as far.
Bruno Cablocco.
I think I recognize you from the 5 now. Yeah. So I was the guy in the office for that.
Oh yeah, let us.
Yeah, get the projector exactly you want it for.
So, yeah, I'm Berlin for the summer.
Yeah. I want to put this like down.
You study in Alberta?
Yes. Yeah, I study political science.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Somehow connected with South Sudan as well?
No, it was kind of a bit of a crash course learning about Juba. Like, I mean, aside from what I do, so
Yeah, me too.
Mostly I kind of focus a little bit on hashtags, like Aboriginal. So it's been, it's been awesome learning and
I might have to practice game.
What do you mean?
Gonna go even pull that back.
Okay. I hope you enjoy. You're not that fit, right?
I'm already finished the internship next week. But I can't believe how much time we bought it.
Yeah, let's go.
Oh, we're ready for you.
That's quick.
Yeah, too quick.
We're ready for you, Steve.
Okay, right. We got the last one. Yep. A little bit more this way, and a little bit more up.
No, I can do it.
Yeah, well, I can do lots of this technical, more technical stuff.
We'll start.
Leben, can we ask you to sit in the red chair there?
All right.
The one long
Okay, yeah.
Do I have to sit here?
You don't have to sit there. And then you don't have to sit there if you want.
Yeah, I mean, you guys won't see what's on the screen anyways.
No, we're not going to see really what's on the screen.
Just one thing before we start. Let me get one to drink.
Yeah, let's go get something out of the fridge.
Are you gonna stick to water, or do you want Coke?
Yeah, okay. And
You
so
only have 50 drinks. We don't have.
I see that you prefer the gray shirt.
Yeah?
You prefer the gray shirt. You don't like the red shirt. Okay.
Ah, the red
no,
shirt.
No problem. Just sit there, sit there.
It's all right.
We'll adjust it, yeah.
Okay.
Which one, brother? I just
So-
need to adjust the picture so that people at home can see.
So
So no problem. I'm gonna do it. We're gonna forget about the stream. We'll just put those slides online after.
Yeah.
Doing our holidays. Maybe no holidays.
This is terrible.
Thank you very much.
Necessary. Okay, so the only thing is that it really is going into the screen sometimes.
Yes, that is.
I'm gonna put it up a little bit higher. Hold on. And then we're ready to go.
So are you gonna go on camera when you say hello?
No, I don't need to go on camera.
Okay.
All right. I'm gonna close the door though, because they have the event downstairs.
Yeah, it's true.
Just one person still coming.
Yeah, I'll leave the door behind you.
Yeah, there's a couple people who wrote saying they're on their way.
Okay.
But, we will see. But shall we begin?
Well, thank you all for coming. I'm Baruch Gottlieb, and together with Dimitri Kleiner, we are both Telecom Winston, and we are also responsible for the space here at Berlin, which is sponsored by ThoughtWorks, IT company.
You tell me.
Which has very strong social justice, economic justice mandate, and very happy to have you here. We're very, very pleased to have you here, Professor Moro, and can't wait to get started to hear what you have to say. Since we're running late, I'll keep it short.
Yeah.
So I'll pass it over to Stevie.
Okay, so thank you, Baruch, and to Dimitri for the invitation. I will just give a very brief little introduction about Professor Moro, who's been our guest for about the past 2 weeks here in Berlin. We just came back actually this afternoon from Munich, where we were at the opening of the Architecture of Peace exhibition at the Munich Architecture Museum. An exhibition I think I would recommend everybody to see if they can, if they're in Munich in the next 2 months, dealing on the role that peace building plays, the role that urbanism plays in peace building. And it's a project that we're hoping actually to bring to Juba at some time. And that's the reason that we were down there. And now back in Berlin, here at the Werkstatt, relatively quick organized event that came on the heels of last week's Defy Hate Now project or event that was hosted by the German Africa Foundation, where we were looking at the issue of hate speech and incitement to violence via social media and what kind of strategies one can use against that. It's also a big issue in South Sudan. Professor Moro is the Director of External Relations at the University of Juba in South Sudan, and he teaches graduate courses in the areas of development, conflict, forced migration, humanitarian affairs, and peace building at the university's Center for Peace and Development Studies. So in a sense, you have two hats on. You're here as a representative of the whole university in terms of exchanges with other organizations, German organizations, but also you are teaching in the Center for Peace and Development Studies. And it's basically in that context that we would really like to hear more about what this country, South Sudan, is about. You're going to give us a little bit of a historical contextualization and try to sort of give us an idea about, let's say, the complexity that this new nation finds itself in. So, Professor, welcome again to Berlin, and the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. It's a very beautiful city, and met really very good people. I'm really very happy to be here. I was trying to think about really what I should cover, because when you talk about South Sudan, really there are lots a lot of interesting things that you can cover, you can talk about. So I think what I will do is just to try to give a general overview of a bit of the history, a bit of the politics, economic issues, and then I will open it up for discussions so that I can talk on issues that we consider very relevant, very, very important. Just to begin, I think maybe all of you or most of you are aware that South Sudan is the newest country in the world. South Sudan was born on the 9th July 2011, and it became the 193rd member of the United Nations, and then the 54th member of the African Union. According to our census, which was conducted in 2008, that time it was still Southern Sudan. It was still part of Sudan. So at that time, the population was said to be about 8 million, about 8 million, between 8 and 9 million. But that census was contested. South Sudanese thought they were not well counted. Yeah, so that was, but roughly you can say the population of South Sudan is somewhere around 10 million, around 8, between 8 and 10 million. South Sudan is a very diverse country, like any other African country. It is diverse in terms of ethnicity, or we talk of tribes. There are many ethnic groups, about 60 ethnic groups, and also it is in terms of beliefs, religions, also it is diverse. Livelihoods, people's means of livelihoods also diverse. When you talk about the economy, then oil is very, very important. Close to over 90% of the budget is based on revenues generated from oil. Maybe let me take you a little back to the history, and then when I go back to the history, then I should begin from when South Sudan was still part of the what? Of the Sudan.
You tell me if you want to see the map.
Yes, okay, I think I want to see the map, okay, so. Yeah, so we begin from Sudan. Now, when you talk of Sudan, the present Sudan is what used to be Northern Sudan. But I'm talking about the former Sudan, that is the big one, which South Sudan was forming part of. So for the people who have studied the history, Sudan is, I think you can see it. It is, yeah, it is that area there.
South Sudan.
Yes, and the name Sudan actually it is derived from the Arab word Bilad al-Sudan, or the land of the blacks. That is Sudan, and so generally it was used by Arabs to describe the land south of the Sahara. And Sudan experienced or suffered a lot of foreigners who came to colonize Sudan. So maybe I begin from the 19th century. From the 19th century, that is precisely from 1820 to 1885, that there was what they called the Turco-Egyptian rule. This was when the Ottoman ruler of Egypt, that is Muhammad Ali, invaded the Sudan. And then he invaded the Sudan simply because of the resources. Muhammad Ali was interested to make this, to become powerful, to strengthen his position. So he went south to Sudan to get resources, minerals, and then people, slaves. So then the Ottoman, the Egyptian army went south and they penetrated to the area here called Equatoria. Now it's divided to Western Equatoria, Central Equatoria, and Eastern Equatoria. So it penetrated coming down the Nile up to what? Up to Equatoria. And so many people were taken into slavery in the south of the country and in the center of the country. So one important feature of the history of Sudan is slavery. Slavery was a major issue, and in due course, the memory became a very divisive issue. So it's it started long time back. But then a local rebellion within Sudan ended what they call the Turco-Egyptian rule, and then an indigenous rule came, what they call the Mahdiya. Mahdiya, actually it was a local rebellion by a Sudanese Arab called Muhammad Hamid. And this is when we talk about Sadiq al-Mahdi and so on. It is tracing himself to Muhammad Ahmed, who described himself as the Messiah, as the Mahdi, the one who is coming to liberate so this ended this rule by the Egyptians and the Turks, but also unfortunately slavery also continued. Many people were captured from Central Sudan and South Sudan, and they were enslaved in Northern Sudan, and others were taken to Egypt.
I'll back up to the bigger picture again.
Yeah, you can go to the bigger picture.
But just because this is the oil map of all of Sudan with South Sudan on it. So the yellow line is the border.
Yeah. This is what they call the South Sudan, but before independence we used to call Southern Sudan. So the slaves were moved from the south to the center, Juba Mountains, and so on to Northern Sudan, and then to Egypt. This period ended in 1889. That is when the Egyptians and the British, they jointly colonized Sudan. And this is what became the period called Anglo-Egyptian Condominion. And this is from 1899 to 1956. 56 is when Sudan became independent. to get its independence. So this briefly is the colonial history. And then this is very important because I mentioned the legacy of slavery, and this is very crucial even to the politics of the country. It became very crucial up to the time when South Sudan became independent. Now let me tell you a little bit about the people of South Sudan. As I mentioned earlier, do we have the Elijah map of
Which one?
which brings South Sudan Elijah map? I think you had one.
The region map?
Yeah.
This one.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So as I said, South Sudan is diverse. It has close to 60 ethnic groups, and then the biggest of this group is what they call the Dinka. And then the president who is Salva Kiir Mayardit is from this group. So if you see this, the Dinka are found in Jongole, Warab, in several of those, there are 10 states in several of those states. But the people of the three, Western, Central, and Eastern Equatoria, these are the tribes are mostly, they are smaller tribes, but also, importantly, they also, they keep, one group do keep cattle, but they rely a lot on growing of crops. But the Dinka, followed by the Nuer, they keep cattle. So cattle is very important for these groups. So ethnicity is very diverse, and also livelihood. So we have people who depend a lot on cattle, and Dinka, the biggest group, and Nuer, the second biggest group, they depend a lot on cattle. But they also grow what? They also grow crops. Also, in terms of religion, we have Christians in South Sudan. We have people who believe in African religions or traditional African beliefs. We also have Muslims, particularly in the urban areas. So you can say in terms of religion, then it is also diverse. We have people. In terms of livelihoods, as I mentioned, it's also there's diversity also there. In terms of the climate, the ecology is also diverse. So you go to the center of the country, then people talk about this black cotton soil. So the soil is what is very, in the rainy season, it's very thick and clay. So if for people who have been to South Sudan, if you go to places like Malakal, it is because the infrastructure is very poor. So sometimes it's even very difficult to walk. You can see people removing their shoes and then carrying what is very wide. And then you come to the border of DRC Congo here, then there is also thick forest. It's very forested and so on. And you go somewhere in the middle, then it is like open savanna. So along the border here, then it is rainfall also is very heavy, and then you can grow a lot of crops like pineapple, wheat, and so on. So you can see the diversity, the peoples are diverse, the livelihoods are diverse, beliefs also diverse, in terms of ecology and all this and so on. This is a very important feature of South Sudan. Diversity is, or let me say about ethnicity. Ethnicity has been important for so many southern groups as a way of defending their own. It's a way of mobilizing themselves to defend their interests. So in that respect, you could say ethnicity can also be a positive word, positive force. But also, it can and it has been manipulated to achieve narrow goals, particularly politicians. I think it's not only in South Sudan, but in other countries where the leaders, they manipulate ethnicity as a way of achieving certain goals, narrow goals, maybe political ambition. Then ethnicity can become very divisive. And in the case of South Sudan, that is when it was still a part of Sudan, and even now, ethnicity has been divisive, and it is not only in South Sudan, but also in other African countries. Likewise, also religious diversity is often manipulated, is used by political leaders or the political elite to achieve narrow aims, and this can create a lot of problems for the country. In the case of South Sudan, this has been a major cause of wars. So I begin with the first war. The first war just started at the time of independence, was in 1956, but the war started in 1955. And that continued until 1972, when there was a peace agreement in Addis Ababa. So what were the reasons of this war? The reasons were, well, I talked about the legacy of slavery. So people, South Sudanese, they had these grievances, the history, the legacy of slavery continued to spoil the relationship between South Sudanese and people in the north who are Muslim and they think of themselves as Arabs. Of course, when you see some of them, they look more or less like me, but they think of themselves as what? As Arabs. So, and they've been using this. They have been, of course, yeah. So the memory slavery was a problem, but they have also been exploiting identity. They have been exploiting ethnic identity to achieve narrow aims, to stay in power. Say a lot of the positions were given to what, to people from these groups which call themselves Arabs. And so this created a lot of a feeling of marginalization in South Sudan. Also, there was the fear of political domination. At the time when the Sudan was moving towards independence, then the South Sudanese were very afraid that they were less educated than the northern Sudanese. So in this political dispensation, they're going to be marginalized and they're going to be dominated. So that fear of domination also played in the minds of South Sudanese. And this also was made worse by the fact that when independence was coming, a lot of the positions in the civil service which were held by the Egyptians and the British were occupied by people from the north, so South Sudanese were really left out of the whole one. So because of the fear of political, economic, and social domination, then it immediately this war started in August 1959. Another point which also I think I should bring to your attention is that South Sudanese were asking for some safeguards that we would like South Sudan to become a federal, to have a federal arrangement as a way of protecting our. So the ruling northern political elite, they accepted as a way of getting South Sudanese to accept independence. But once independence was achieved, they went back on that promise. They said no. And it became, at that time, it became so difficult when you talk about federalism that it is almost, it is taken by the state as treason. So then because of that, then the Southerners organized this rebellion, which was called Anyanya Rebellion. And so the fighting, many people, it went on for 17 years. Many people died, nearly 500,000 people died. Many others were forced to flee to neighboring countries. So my people who are very close to, we are very close to the border here. A lot of people from my ethnic group, they fled to Uganda. So they fled to Uganda. Then in 1972, then the fighting ended because there was then a peace agreement between the rebels and then the government in Khartoum. That time it was the time of the president called Jafar Nimeri. So this fighting ended, and then South Sudanese were given an autonomous system. They had their own executive and parliament and so on at that time. Unfortunately, this peace agreement lasted only for 10 years because then the same Nimeri decided to go back on this agreement. And then he sort of abrogated the agreement, he dissolved the agreement, he divided the South Sudan into three regions, which was called Upper Nile. Yeah, you can go to that one.
That's the three colors, basically, right?
Yeah. So that is the Paragazat, that is Upper Nile, that included Unity, Jongole, and Upper Nile, Unity, and Jongole. That one was what Upper Nile. And the three Equatorial regions, they form one. Then also Nimeri imposed Islamic Sharia law. So this one caused a lot of problem for South Sudanese to live under Islamic Sharia law, where if you go and enjoy a bottle of beer that they take you for lashing, 30 or something, that was really very difficult for South Sudanese. Then in 1983, the war resumed. So the war resumed, and this was led by somebody, I don't know, maybe some of you have heard the name, is Dr. John Garang who passed away. So, and he was in the first, actually, rebellion. He took part in the first rebellion, and because the agreement had been abrogated, so the fighting resumed. And then, but there was a difference in the objectives. Like the first war, the objectives was for separation, that we are going to fight for a separate South Sudan. But the war that started in 1983, that group of rebels said, we are not going to fight for separation, but we are going to fight for a new Sudan. We want to reform Sudan completely. We want to reform Sudan so that the Sudan can include all of us without any distinction. No distinction because of your ethnic group, no distinction because of your religion, and so on. So that was the objective of the second rebellion, which started in 1983. But of course, things didn't work like that. As you know, it worked out differently. And the reasons for the second rebellion, which started in 1983 and ended in 2005 with a peace agreement, a very historic peace agreement called the Comprehensive Peace Agreement. The root causes of the rebellion are more or less the same with the first rebellion. One is the manipulation of identities. And when I talk about identities, we are talking about race, Arab African, ethnicity or tribe, where tribe or ethnicity is manipulated as a way of some politicians getting power or resources, and also religion. Because when you talk about Islamic Sharia law being declared all over the country, there are political objectives behind it, because the political elite were using religion as a way to getting to power and also maintaining power. So one of the root causes was manipulation of ethnicity, of identities, and mostly is done by people in the North, political elite, who are Muslim, and they think of themselves as Arabs. So they are the ones really doing the manipulation of these identities. Secondly, is the issue of economic marginalization. Or sometimes they talk about uneven development. So development is concentrated only in certain parts of the former Sudan, the capital, and then just in the parts in the north of the country. But the west of the country, where there's ongoing fighting, South Sudan, there are completely there are not many projects have been implemented there. So the projects development was concentrated in a small part of the north. And so then the people who are marginalized, then so they had to struggle. They had to struggle to get a fair deal. Another root cause is political marginalization. So power is in the hands, mostly in the hands of people who are Muslim and think of themselves as Arabs. Political elite from this group, but the rest of the people, people from South Sudan, from Darfur and so on, they were not adequately represented in the center of power in Khartoum. So because of all this, then the Southerners took up arms, and the fighting was very costly in terms of many people, millions of people were killed, or were forced to flee. Some became internally displaced. They fled to Khartoum, others to many of them crossed to neighboring countries. I crossed to Egypt, so I was a refugee in Cairo. Then also in the context of war, then slavery also became an issue because the same groups that were participating in slave raiding and then enslaving people also started capturing people in South Sudan, particularly the Dinka in the areas bordering the north. So people were being also enslaved. So then this also militated against relations between the north and the south. So many women and children became slaves. Even the government in Khartoum, it was more like they were talking of abductions, that people were being abducted. They don't want to use the word slave word, but actually what was happening was that people were being enslaved. The second war ended in 2005 with the signing of historic comprehensive peace agreement in Nairobi between the government in Khartoum and Omar al-Bashir, and then and the rebels, or what they call the rebel group, called the Sudan People's Liberation Movement, or Sudan People's Liberation Army. So, and let me read you at the signing ceremony. This is what John Gering said. I said that he told the crowd that the CPA marked the emergence of a united new Sudan, and that if the country failed to rise to the challenge of moving to the new Sudan, then the union would be dissolved through the right of self-determination. So for John Gering Dimavio, I think he wanted the unity of the country to be maintained, but under a different basis, under a different model. He needed a complete transformation, and he talked about the new Sudan. But if the leaders of the country fail to do this, then the right of self-determination will dissolve the what? The union. Southerners, in that agreement, the CPA, Southerners were given the right after 6.5 years to go to the polls and decide whether to continue being part of Sudan or to form their own country. So I think for the SPLA, or at least many in the SPLA, they wanted the unity of the country to be maintained, but under a different basis. But because unity was not made attractive during the 6.5 years, the political leadership of the country did not make the necessary changes so that everybody can feel to be part of what. So then we went to what? Then a new country was born, which became the Republic of South Sudan. And as I said, this new country was born on the 9th July 2011, and it was a huge celebration in Juba. The UN, people from the UN were there, the citizens of South Sudan. It was a very joyful day, because for many South Sudanese, they never felt that they were equal citizens in this country called Sudan. They felt that they were considered as second-class citizens. So they wanted to be first-class citizens in their own country. And so they voted overwhelmingly, close to 99% of those who participated in the referendum voted for an independent country in the south of the, in the south of the country. So after the new country was born, then building a new state became the issue. And I think for many people, we never expected that building a new state would be easy. We expected that it was going to be difficult. Difficult because of the legacy of many years of what? Of war. So many people, over 2 decades of fighting, people were traumatized. So that legacy would definitely affect the building of this new country. It's not going to be smooth. And I have to say that a lot of effort went in building this the new country, both locally within the leadership in the country, and also with support of the international community. South Sudan had the goodwill of the international community, so a lot of efforts went to build this state, to build institutions. But and the expectation, there was huge expectation, because if you ask me why did you choose a smaller country rather than keeping the biggest country in Africa? We love the big country in Africa, but then that big country never considered all of us as equal citizens. And that is why we say, and also we had to fight, people were fighting. I told you that there was fighting for 17 years, the first war. Then there was fighting for over 2 decades, over 21 years. So for many people, we voted for a new country to end the cycle of what? Of fighting, so that we have a peaceful country in the south and a peace country in the north. But of course, there have been many problems. This expectation, maybe the expectations were very high, and the expectations were not adequately met. Our things happen, good things happen, but maybe people expected more. And there were many issues also. Firstly, there were issues that when the two countries were formed, there were many issues that were not resolved. For example, the issue of the border was not resolved. The issue, the oil, I told you about oil. Oil is very important for the economy of the new country. But the oil is most of the oil in the south, but the pipelines are what? In the north. So an arrangement of how the use of this water proved to be very problematic. And because of many of these unresolved issues between the two new countries, then there was fighting along the border. This was in 2012. So the two new countries went to war along the border because of these unresolved issues. So that was a major problem, that the political leadership in the South, a lot of effort, a lot of time was spent on resolving the differences with what became the Republic of Sudan in the North. Of course, also in the South, there were development expectations for development. So this, the war left another legacy, is that some of the worst figures when you talk about maternal mortality and so on, some of the worst in the world are what? In South Sudan. So handling this, dealing with these development issues became extremely difficult. Another issue is also building a nation out of these different, I talk about these ethnic groups. How do you build a sense that all of us belong here? We are the nation of South Sudan. That also proved to be problematic. So all this, then there were rebellions, particularly in Jongole. The people who were in the army, in the liberation army, they rebelled. And there were some of them, the rebellions were settled. Then the biggest problem now is last year in December, 15th December, then when fighting started. And this started because of political disagreements within the ruling party, what they call the Sudan People's Liberation Movement, and then this, then the army, what they call the presidential guard, there was fighting within this, and then this within the presidential guard, and then the fighting now just escalated, and it spread to other parts of the country. Now, 3 states that I told you, Unities, Jongole, and Upper Nile, these are the epicenter of the current rebellion. It's a rebellion which is being led by the former vice president of the country, which is Riek Machar, against the government led by President Kiir. So that conflict is still ongoing. There's a ceasefire. The regional group, both the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD, is taking the lead to negotiate and end this current political crisis, the fighting. The 2 parties to the conflict, they agreed to a ceasefire, but the ceasefire, there are a lot of accusations about violations of the ceasefire, and the negotiations start. The negotiations began, but they have been adjourned. So, so that is the current situation. Unfortunately, the current fighting now also caused a serious humanitarian problems. Many people were killed or displaced. Some of them became internally displaced persons. They took refuge in UN bases in the country. Others fled the border to Uganda, Ethiopia, and other neighboring countries. So that is the current setback to the development in the new country. And I think what I will do is maybe let me stop here, and then I open it up for questions and discussions, so that I can maybe we talk about something that you find very not relevant. So thank you very much.
He was the fastest. Let me be over there.
Okay.
I have a question about the relationship that, like, so you showed that the oil is in the south of Sudan, and then the refining, the pipelines and all that is in the north. It's North Sudan, or just Sudan. Who are the major countries and business interests that are involved in processing and exporting this oil?
So, all right, that is a good question. Yes, as I said, I think there was a map of the pipeline. Is it? Yeah, I think I saw it somewhere. Yeah, the oil actually was discovered in the 70s by Chevron, by the Americans. Then in the 1990s, because of, in part because of the differences between the US government and then the government, the leaders who took power in Khartoum. Omar al-Bashir, the present guy, who came up with this issue of Sharia law, inviting Osama bin Laden. For a while, he was there in Khartoum. So the Americans withdrew. The Americans left. Then the government in Khartoum visited actually China, and then the Asian companies came in. So the companies are from China, from Malaysia, Petronas from Malaysia, and from India. So these are state companies from Asia, China, Malaysia, and India, which are the ones exploiting the oil. So China, the three countries, they have very huge economic interests in the two countries. The pipelines actually they're also they're owned by these companies, and these companies they are formed very large consortia, which are the ones exploiting this one. So yeah.
I'm wondering about in the conflict, who is this? Are there different economic interests applying either side of the division between Machar and Kiir in the conflict in the north parts, or are the Chinese or Malaysians involved in providing weapons or anything like that? How are the two parties being supported there?
Yeah, the fighting started in December, which is really which is very recent, and yeah, the Ugandan troops in Juba, and these Ugandan troops actually played a key role in securing Juba. And then the oil fields, the oil in Unity State is no longer flowing because of the fighting. The oil, of course, as I said, oil is the main resource, is the backbone of the economy of South Sudan. So the oil in Unity State is no longer flowing because of the conflict. It is only in Upper Nile where there's about 165,000 barrels being produced every day. So, and this oil is still flowing through Khartoum to international markets. So definitely the government in Juba is still it is the government, so it continues getting the money from the oil. For the rebels, we don't know where I don't know who is where they're getting their support from and so on. But of course, because of the Ugandan troops in Juba, which fought alongside the government army, so the rebels are not very happy with the presence of the Ugandan troops in Juba. They would like them to withdraw, and there have been discussions about bringing a regional force which can help to uh, help to ensure that the ceasefire holds. So there are discussions about troops coming from the region, from Ethiopia, Kenya, and other countries.
Daniel?
I have one or two questions. But before, if I understand from what you were talking about the history of Sudan, it seems to me that for decades the black population of Sudan and South Sudan have lived an oppression and also wars. So during this period, you have many generations that only know war, and therefore you have like a kind of mindset of war culture in them. So how do you then build a nation in this? How does the nation building process happen then? How do you get people to think in other ways than fighting? That's my first question. My second question is, what is the role of social media in that process? Because social media can be very manipulative, especially you talked about the, how politicians use ethnicity, I think, differences and also religions to achieve their own goals. So how does what kind of role the social media plays in that nation building?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think you are right to state that there are people who grew up in this war situation. I personally, I think we experienced war over many years. First, there was a refugee in Uganda. The war ended. We went back to South Sudan. Again, the war started. Then we went back to become refugee. And recently, also, even my family became refugee from somewhat. They fled to Uganda because of the recent fighting, but they are now back in Juba. So it is true that many people, they are born in this situation and they grew up in this situation of war. And the trauma of war, many people experience traumatic experiences. They face traumatic experiences. Then the question is, how do you deal with how? So that needs a lot of work. That needs a lot of work. Uh, that that means peace. How do you end war and then ensure that peace can prevail? That means many political leaders must become responsible. They become responsible and they try their best so that the countries can have and also other people can do their part. For example, peace building activities, conflict resolution. These are very important. And also healing, issues of justice and all this. So it really requires many groups and people to be involved. It needs the effort of many, many people within the country and outside. There are already ongoing efforts, somewhat being done, uh, groups focusing on justice, others talking about healing, um, reconciliation, community, and so on. But really, it needs a lot of work. It is really not simple. It is very important. It needs involvement of many people, and it takes time. I think it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take time because uh, many people have been in a war situation for many, many years. But also we know that some countries experience similar situations, isn't it? But they found a way of overcoming them. So we can also learn from even this beautiful country where we are now. I think they also experienced that dark spot in their history. So we can also learn from them and try to build a more peaceful society back in my own country and in other countries in Africa. I think when we are talking to you in Mali, I think Mali experiences the same problem. On the issue of the media, definitely the media in the context of war, the media, different people will want to use the media to what? To further their aims. That definitely happens. And unfortunately, recently there's been some report of one radio station which was actually used in a very bad way to incite people to commit crimes. And this is a serious problem. In South Sudan, maybe when we talk about maybe the social media, internet, and so on, that is not still, maybe in the urban areas and so on. But when you go far away, maybe it's very limited. But also we have the diaspora. We have many people in the, over this many years of war. People went to America, to Australia, to other countries, isn't it? So they also communicate and they use this social media. And this can really be used to mobilize, particularly young people. Can be used to mobilize young people to do things that, to get involved in violent activities. And this can be dangerous. So if we have, like recently we had the event we had here. Yes, so we also have to raise people's awareness that this media can be abused. And instead of being good, it can be used to do what terrible things against other people.
There was a question here from Tim, and then we go to Goma. We're moving along.
Yes, I was wondering, as a professor, how have things changed at the university since fighting started? Not just from general questions like could university go on, do people have to leave, etc., but also from maybe the discussions. What do your students think of this? I mean, you're teaching exactly peace and conflict studies, so what are the discussions in the classroom? What ideas do they have? How debated are certain ideas like federalism and everything that's going on right now? Yeah, I'd like to hear, share a couple of the stories with us.
Yeah, we have 5 public universities, and the largest and the oldest is the University of Juba, and that is my employer. That is where definitely the universities also they got affected. Like my old university, University of Juba, one of the direct impact is that some of our students are now in the UN camps in Juba. So some of my students actually They are still afraid to go and stay in their homes, so they still stay in the UN base in Juba. Initially, it was very difficult for them. They could not come to attend classes. But recently, as the situation is stabilizing, getting calmer, so they have been attending classes, and I was very happy to see them. And then, uh, uh, yeah, so that is an improvement. Uh, and in terms of the discussions, what happens in the university, we definitely do the normal teaching activities. And we have also public events. Like for example, recently we had an event on federalism, and
The
Douglas
university was
Johnson.
not shut down afterwards.
No, yeah, we only went during the violence, the university. We were actually on holidays, so we delayed the opening for I think a week or two, and then we are operating normally. We took our exams and so on, and the discussions, the other normal activities are taking place. Maybe not at the same extent. And as I said, we had this very nice public event on federalism, which has become a hot topic. And we even plan to do more public events. The public events, they are done in one of our halls, and people from outside are allowed to come. And the university has always been a very good place where these debates happen. We have the autonomy. We have been doing this, and we still continue to do it.
Yeah, thank you. I would just like to make 2 or 3 comments, and maybe if you can reflect on it. Stephen, perhaps if you can go back to the previous map, oil map. I think it quite well illustrates not only the problem of the social media, but also the mainstream media. I mean, just on July 9th, the top quality art TV channel here in Germany. In France, they had a documentary about South Sudan, and it was so simplistic, and much of the information that we get here is so misleading. I mean, just if you look at this map, which is not a criticism of you for choosing it, but I mean, it starts by, look, I mean, there's only one pipeline, and what just mentioned, part of the other pipeline that actually goes to the Upper Nile oil fields that are producing oil is completely missing. Abyei, which is disputed between Sudan and South Sudan, is, you know, here the problem is solved on this map. It's clearly it's part of Sudan, which I think the South Sudanese would not appreciate, and there are areas that are disputed in the western part of that border. Also, like if you look at the northeastern part with Egypt, that triangle is disputed, the same with Kenya. So I think, you know, sometimes here in the Western world, but also spilling out back to South Sudan through like the BBC, there's a lot of simplification, oversimplification. And that brings me to the exciting element of social media, cross media. I mean, when this tragedy started in December 15th, the BBC was very quick to report about ethnic violence, and semantics here really matter. I mean, if the German media do it, you know, that's annoying to me, but it doesn't have repercussions in South Sudan. But there, people are listening to the BBC World Service and they hear about ethnic conflict when it's a political one, actually in the beginning stage, becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I think, and also, I mean, Western media, they always report, Salkia is a Dinka and Riek Machar is a Nuer, and that's it. You know, as if Dinka and Nuer were born to hate each other, which is utter bullshit. And I mean, that if you look, who are his main opponents, apart from Riek Machar, it's mainly Dinka Boer. And even within the Dinka Boer, there are, you know, which I think it's also difficult to talk about tribes or groups or even communities when it's even, as you highlighted in the beginning, it's very diverse, but even within those groups, if you like, it's much more complex than that. And I think it also applies to the historical narrative. You know, like now it's quite, in Sudan academia, it's quite disputed whether the first war started in 55, and it was a mutiny, and then there were quite a few 5 years, and the actual rebellion started in 63. So I think my point is actually that, we cannot do it tonight, but I think we need much more micro-analysis in cooperation with you, with your students and your colleagues to get a more multifaceted picture, and these often very quiet narratives.
Yes, I will agree. I think for the media, maybe the Western media, they want to make it easy for people to understand. So they really simplify or oversimplify. But the reality, as you correctly mentioned, is that this is a very complex situation. There are many things happening there. And maybe when you have a discussion with experts, the discussion will be very different. We will go down to many details and so on. So I fully agree. That is a problem. This is a problem that maybe they want their audience. It's an audience that may not even know where South Sudan is anyway. But I think we were asked a very interesting question. I introduced myself that I'm coming from Juba. Then they say, where in Juba? I said, no, as where in Juba, we expected a visit. Yeah, so the media, I think they really want to make it easy for the audience to watch. But in doing so, that they sometimes oversimplify to the extent of going to the one in a very even stating things wrong. Really, they get in a one. That is a problem.
Do you get the resources for those studies that should be conducted also to write your own history? I mean, is there enough cooperation and support from foreign universities or governments or foundations or whatever?
Yeah, definitely we have maybe, well, our universities, because of the many years of war, definitely there's a serious lack of resources in terms of even simple things like having a reliable internet is a major problem. Having a good library is not there. And also having the people who have the expertise, the knowledge, to be able to do research. There are very few, but we have very good people in other universities who are really interested in these issues. And what we try to do is to work with these people, to do collaboration, like with other universities. Like Durham University, for example, in the UK, they have a very excellent archive, very excellent. And so we try to explore these opportunities for collaboration. Even when I came to here in Germany, I've also been talking to people from different places and universities to look for opportunities for collaboration so that we can do teaching and do research together as a way of building our own capacity and also as a way of coming out with a better one. Yeah, better to say research, more accurate research or writings. But the point you make is very true. Yeah, simplification is a major problem. Yeah, it's a major issue.
No, the questions here, but we'll go to Siri, because we haven't heard from you yet, and then we'll back to Siri.
Yeah, well, I wanted to go back to the education point, but more at the level of basic education or national education with respect to policies and nation building. So I'm wondering what kind of policies are being implemented with respect choices around language and religious diversity, and especially ethnic diversity. Like in North Sudan, they produce these primers where they take a tour of all the regions of North Sudan to represent all the ethnic groups, but they all have Muslim names. I'm wondering what kind of choices would be made now, post-independence, to create nations.
Yes, our official language is English, of course.
But is there any kind of acknowledgement or recognition of linguistic diversity, or?
Yes, and we are now even I think, yeah, it's a policy somewhere that even teaching in local languages at the primary or something is going to be done. I think it's going to be it's a policy. So it is a way of also promoting the local language, and also a way of building this nation. Is a way of, so that people can feel included, and also in the radio and so on. There are also local languages are also we have broadcasts in local languages and so on. So that is something that I think the government is working towards. But also we have serious problems, like in the university, is that there was one time the government in Khartoum decided that we want to teach in Arabic. So do away with English. So now we have students who feel conversant. They want to learn in Arabic, but our official language is what? Is English. So then also to make this transition so that people can say we are the teaching is going to be done in English, and then Arabic will be there as a language only. This also is a problem. I think it is part of the transition. The transition definitely, even as a university, we face a bit of difficulties because from our students who feel that they cannot operate in English, but over time this will be solved. I think this is part of building the new state. There will be problems, yeah. But the issue of language is very important because during the leaders in Khartoum, the problem was how to force everybody to this Arabic language, Arabic culture, and so on. And this has been part of the problem. So now we want to move to a situation where our local languages also recognized and then developed, and also in the educational system.
Yeah, I was wondering because I come from a place in the world where identity and that kind of conflicts are very strong, which is the Balkans. So we have Kosovo there, we have ex-Yugoslavia and that kind of stuff. And for instance, what we have seen in Serbia, in Albania, and in Kosovo was a very huge difference between how the same history is being told in one place and in another, with of course each of one pointing to the other, is the bad guy. You know. Have you observed, and this has been like very consistent in primary education, and I have seen this myself, the way the Cold War was told to me at school in Bulgaria was not at all the same way the Cold War was told in Western Europe, you know. So we have seen these very consistent differences in primary, very basic education. Are you able to assess that kind of things already? Because for us, it started like in the months following the Berlin Wall, the end of the Berlin Wall, the end of the separation, the end of the Kosovo conflict, etc. It started like immediately after. This kind of separation of stories, and each country and its government promoting their official version of the story, which in turn, creates an official collective memory, which is then propagated in political speech, and which today basically comes out as the rise of far-right and populist parties and ideologies, right, which quite strongly in the region. So I'm really interested to know whether that kind of reappropriation of history, the political reappropriation of history, has started already in your situation in South Sudan, or between like surrounding states or something like this, because, well, the Arab states have their own problems at the moment. But still, I'm very interested to hear about this speech changes.
Yeah, that definitely is a big issue. I think there is history. Before we became independent, before South Sudan broke away, then the history, how history, who is writing history, who is teaching history. This was a major problem because the history was very much about, it is very much about Islam, it's about Arabs and so on. So that was a major problem, and I think for Southerners, the Southerners were calling more for recognition and celebration of the diversity of the country. The fact that the country, indeed, we have Arabs, we have Africans, we have people of belonging to different groups. The important thing is they should think of this country as all of them belong to this country. So that was a major problem. But now we have become independent. So then our education, the education ministry, is now working on this issue of textbooks, what textbooks are doing. So he's working on this. And I think that they will, and these are people from different experts, from different backgrounds and so on. So when they are writing these textbooks, they're working on the syllabus and so on to be rewarded. So all this will be taken into account. I think what is very important is that they would like the teaching, the unity, development of a sense of nationhood, which is instead of everybody say I'm from this tribe and so on. So okay, I'm from this tribe, but you should think of your country first, and then you. So this is an issue. Now the other issue that really they have to address is that during the war, there are different parts of the country were different syllabus. Like certain parts close to Uganda were taking Uganda exams from Uganda. Others from so there's this confused system. But gradually now, how do you? They are coming up with one examination, one system for the whole country. And this also, in this system, we also take into account of developing a sense of nationhood. That is very important. Yeah, but these are issues that still people are thinking about them and dealing about them.
But yeah, okay. Sure. Yeah, we heard about ethnic diversity quite a few times, and the way you want to resolve, these the issues that ethnic diversities can also bring. I just want to know how you do that in South Sudan. But a quick example to see my line of thinking in that way is that in the 13th century in Mali, there was a king, a number of cultures that came, and at that time there were also lots of wars around, and the system he kind of forced on people, different ethnic people, to maintain some kind of balance is to force them to intermarry. And how is there not forced, but is there ethnic marriage in South Sudan as well? Because when you show the map, you could identify exactly where different ethnicities can be like majority. So how does it work?
Yeah, marriages. Actually, people intermarry. My wife is not from my tribe. Actually, it's only that I think maybe there are groups, people who are like far away in a certain like an ethnic group living in a certain world, and then another group far away. Maybe they don't have a lot of opportunities to work. But if you come to, say, a town, young people, they live, and people intermarry. And particularly when people became refugees, then in refuge, people also marriages for people from different ethnic groups have been happening. Maybe the other problem maybe is for some people is that the cattle keeping groups may be demanding dowry. A large number of what? A large number of cattle, which people from crop growing may not be able to work easily work. But if you really you get a lady from say that group and you are determined to marry, I'm sure you can work and get the resources. But even though there's a lot of work. Even this group, what they call the Nuer and the Dinka, they live very close there. They see the work. The people in Tamil, really, there are a lot of work. And there's a lot of similarities among this. A lot of similarities between even the cultures of these groups. But when you talk about a sense to make people feel that we all belong to this country, then you need to do many other things. You need to even at a highly political level, then you have the leaders have to work towards this. They have to the political establishment should ensure that people feel that they belong to this country, the different groups, the political system, the regulations, the rules, and all this is taken into account. There are also discussions about a museum in Juba. So all this, the museum, it will also be a good source of people to feel that what this is for all of us. We went to this war, we struggled together, and therefore we belong to what? We belong to. But this will take an effort from leaders, from many other civil society groups and so on to achieve this.
Yeah, thank you. On the subject of creating national identity of some sort, you were talking before when Sudan was South Sudan was part of Sudan, that there was this separation and all the privilege went to the northern, most of them went to the city in Khartoum, so the people in southern Sudan were underrepresented. And now that Southern Sudan is its own country, how is it now with, for example, we were talking about it the other night, the difference of aspirations between people living in the city, the urban people, and the people in the country. How is that
how is there a strong distinction between those populations and the aspirations of people who are living out far away and traditionally maybe less educated, and the ones who are living in the city and closer to the political establishment?
Yeah, yeah actually, one of the problem in South Sudan is that some of the mistakes that were made by leaders in Khartoum, some of them are being repeated by our leaders, and this is unfortunate. And this is a serious problem. For example, the issue of development. We see increasingly that a lot of the development that is happening in the urban areas. The schools, the good schools are there in the urban areas, in Juba particularly. And the result is that people in the countryside will what? They will go to where they feel they can get the what? And they get the services. And this is a problem, and we begin to see this is happening. So initially, actually, the policy, the slogan was taking the town to the people, but this has not happened. We find that the rural areas are forgotten. It's not much is happening there. And as a result, the young people, some of the work, they begin to move to the work, the urban areas, and definitely this is also a great problem. Because many of the youth who are moving to the urban areas should not be finding the jobs that they were looking for, and this will create a problem. And this is happening. It's a problem, and it needs to be addressed.
I've got a question as well. This a lot of the things that you're saying, also in the university and so on, saying it should be like this. The leaders should be doing this, but they're not. And the world has changed dramatically since December. One thing that we've seen is that there's been at least attempts at civil society to raise its voice a little bit. Do you see a stronger role of civil society starting to actually fill maybe even the vacuum that the failure of the political leadership has created? I mean, how is that dynamic? I mean, even at the university, we say it sounds a little bit like everyday business is as usual, but it must be radically different. And I mean, people are saying it must be like this, it should be like this, but there's no way to get the political leadership to do that. There's no political will, but people have a will.
Yeah, definitely the civil society has a role. Civil society has a role. Civil society should be playing a more active role. But of course, we have to recognize that also civil society has got a lot of problems. There are a lot of problems, and so this also limits their ability to do work. But definitely, the civil society have a role, and the civil society have been actually very active. Have been very active. For example, during this time, they have been talking about we want the civil society organizations to be involved. They want to take part. They think we have a role to play, and this is the campaign, the work, and definitely that is will create a change. This will and the universities also. The universities have a role, of course, to produce the manpower, the people who will work in these institutions, but also in research. They can also produce research which can also lead to positive positive change in the town. So all this civil society, they have a role, but they have their limitations. And I think there's a future for them.
Yes, you said early on that some of your students fear to leave the refugee camps, the UN camps in Juba. So maybe you can explain that. Who do they fear and what do they fear?
Well, when the fighting started in Juba, then certain people got killed. They got killed, particularly in some neighborhoods. So certain people felt insecure, and so then they fled to the UN base in Juba, and then they've been there. Particularly the people in Juba who are in the UN base, they're from the Nuer ethnic group, so they feel they're still afraid to go to their homes. And when this problem started, I was actually in Bentiu, and so in Bentiu, I felt insecure, so I also sought refuge in the UN base in Bentiu. Actually, I found one, I think he's a European who was also taking refuge. So all those people who felt that they might be targeted, then they sought this refuge in the UN bases across the country. And I think the UN played a big role actually to provide protection and security.
But do they fear it right now too? Some students to walk across Juba?
Yes. Actually now the problem is that the students, they come from the UN base, and they come for classes and they go back.
Yeah.
So during the day, they feel is secure. They can move.
Were there incidents?
But then at night, then they cannot be able to stay in their place. Some of them is not only that. Some of them also, it seems like their homes were destroyed during this war. So there even probably no place to go to. But it is this fear that if I go to my home, maybe somebody will come at night and attack me and kill me. That is the fear. That is why they remain on the UN base. And even there have been attempts to try to say, okay, you can, because the situation, the UN base now they have been moved to another more larger facility under the UN. But before they were in a place that was not meant for a very small place. And in the rainy season, the situation was so dire for them. But simply it is because they feel that they are not going to be secure in their homes. That is why they moved there. But maybe in due course, when there is a peace agreement in place, and then they can, people feel that it is all right for them to go home, then they will go to the places where they came from.
Maybe just one short question to that. Who do they fear at night time? Is it military personnel that are walking around in uniform, or is it or the civilians?
Actually, it is now more individual. It is like me in my house. Do I feel secure or I don't feel secure? Do I feel that somebody, whoever that might be, will come to my home and kill me or not? So that is really is individual, but also in the context of where there have been this fighting in the town. So it is really about security. Security is a major problem. So So it is really more from individual, like people fear. You may not know actually even who will attack you. Like when I was in Bentiu, then there was a lot of shooting all over the place. So the only place where I could run to is the UN base, where I feel that no one is going to come and kill me. That is why then people like
Well, maybe we come to a close soon. Okay, one more question, then I have a wrap up.
Try to make it short. We already talked about this issue of the civil society and if they raise their voice or not. And I'm wondering how big do you think is the part of the society now which is able to speak out and to do something, yeah? And do they communicate with each other all over the country, or is it not possible because there's not enough telecommunication infrastructure? So yeah, what would be needed to enable this civil society in the future?
So yeah, definitely for civil society to be able to communicate among themselves and also from other people from outside, you require, I think you require very good internet access. I will talk from my own life in the university. We have serious problem internet access, and that limits our ability to communicate with other work and also people from outside. I think if we develop the communication, and to make it also cheap, it is cheap. You may, if you have money, maybe you can be able to set up a visa somewhere, but running a visa is very problematic. It's very difficult. People don't have the money, and definitely good internet access. I think it can be, but that also has to do with money, also, the resources. Yeah.
Okay, we'll just wrap up with one very, very straightforward question that came up on a tweet. Given everything that's now happened and the situation which is becoming unclearer and more complex by the day in South Sudan, what is actually needed to bring a lasting peace in South Sudan? If you had your way, what would you do?
I think we need to do a lot of things. We need to do a lot of things, and one of them is to continue impressing upon our leaders, to continue putting the pressure on our leaders to negotiate seriously and in good faith, so that the ceasefire which is in place can be a reality, can work, because there's violations and so on. And then finally, we have to reach a peace agreement, so that the fighting can come to an end, and we can go back to begin doing development. So I think we need a lot of help from within and also from outside to impress upon the two parties that they have to negotiate in good faith, so that we end this madness which can our country, and which is a major setback to everybody in the country.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Professor Leben Nelson Moro from Juba, for being here, and for the folks at Werkstatt Berlin, and for you guys who came. You're still here until Sunday, so I mean, you're available and free and reachable, and thank you very much for this discussion and this insight.
Yeah. Thank you.